So, imagine this: waking up to find that a so called peace plan has been cooked up behind your back, and it's written in your enemy's language, literally and figuratively. It's a scenario
Yep.
that's really rattling Kyiv and many European capitals right now.
Right. So what's the core of this whole situation we're talking about?
Well, it all starts with a leaked phone call showing that Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, is apparently working hand in hand with the
Hmm.
Kremlin. In that chat, he discusses pitching a Ukraine peace deal that, frankly, would, force Ukraine into capitulation and even give up territories like Donetsk.
Whoa. So it's like the plan is not about a genuine compromise at all, but more about an imposed, unequal settlement.
Exactly. The leaked call reveals that this peace plan is fundamentally skewed towards Moscow's demands. For instance, a land swap that essentially trades territory for a facade of peace.
Right.
And what's wild is that this plan isn't coming from traditional diplomacy. It's being shaped by a real estate guy with deep business ties and some very non-traditional backgrounds.
So you're saying that instead of seasoned diplomats, we have someone like Witkoff, whose background isn't exactly conventional for delicate negotiations?
Yes, that's spot on. You got this guy, a wealthy developer who's been plucked by Trump to handle something as complex as Ukraine policy. And not only that, his approach so far seems very much to take on the Russian narrative, like accepting their version of why the war started and what a fair settlement should look like.
Hmm. And what about that secret peace plan? How did that factor into all this?
Oh, yeah, the so called 28-point plan. It was drafted secretly by Witkoff, along with Jared Kushner and a Russian counterpart, Kirill Dmitriev. This plan, which some say has been trimmed down now but still reflects Russian preferences, outlines things like recognition of control over parts of Donbass, restrictions on Ukraine's military capability, and even blocks on future NATO membership. It's like a blueprint
Right.
engineered to lock Ukraine into a long term disadvantage.
That sounds like a real political landmine. Doesn't it set a precedent for using peace as a tool to enforce unequal terms on a smaller country?
Exactly, and that's one of the key takeaways here. It's really um, a tactic where powerful opponents use the idea of peace to convert battlefield setbacks into a permanent political defeat.
Yeah.
It's not really peace at all if one side ends up uh, fundamentally weakened and forced to concede territory.
But isn't it also a very risky move? I mean, if Ukraine caves in, doesn't that risk like fracturing NATO and undermining the whole transatlantic alliance?
Right, absolutely. Critics are worried that if you see a major ally like Ukraine forced into surrendering territory, it could signal that even our most stable borders can be rewritten by force.
Hmm.
This could seriously undermine NATO's credibility, making European allies question whether they, too, might be left to fend off pressure from Russia or even from within.
So, in essence, if Ukraine is pressured into that deal, it's not just Ukraine that's on the line, but the integrity of the entire alliance.
Precisely. And then there's Trump's stance in all of this, his desire to rush a deal, to claim a historic peace, even setting deadlines like Thanksgiving as ultimatums for Ukraine.
Yeah,
Imagine being told to sign away your sovereignty or face a drastic reduction in US support.
that's like being backed into a corner, a desperate bargain under pressure, right?
Exactly. And it gets even more dramatic. Behind the scenes, there's this effort to shape the narrative in Washington and Moscow while keeping Ukraine largely in the dark. It's a classic example of using a peace plan as a weapon rather than a genuine path to ending
Hmm.
conflict.
But don't you think that there might be internal dissent within the U.S. system about this plan? I've heard some Republicans and Democrats saying that Witkoff is too biased toward Russia.
Yes, that's a great point. There is indeed a
Right.
split. Some insiders, including members of Congress and even in parts of the administration, are voicing that this envoy's approach is far too accommodating towards Moscow. It's like there's this internal tug of war. On one end, there's the urgency to end the war because America can't fund Ukraine indefinitely. On the other, a deep seated worry that awarding Moscow its demands would reward aggression.
It seems like a tightrope walk between wanting to end conflict quickly and ensuring that no side ends up permanently disadvantaged.
Indeed, and this whole situation really exposes how powerful external forces can, use peace negotiations to impose unequal deals. Picture it like someone designing a custom workout that only benefits themselves and leaves you exhausted and injured.
Yeah, I see that. That's a vivid image. And what about the battlefield context? How does Ukraine's current military and political situation factor into all this?
Definitely a crucial part. Ukraine is under heavy military strain. Russia, despite its significant casualties, continues to mobilize large forces, and it's ruthlessly targeting Ukraine's critical infrastructure, especially energy
Hmm.
facilities. At the same time, Ukraine is struggling with shortages in both manpower and equipment. This creates an environment where, politically and militarily, Ukraine appears vulnerable, making the proposed peace deal an even more tempting trap for a desperate state.
So, in a way, the internal strains, like the corruption scandal around energy contracts, are being exploited to push Ukraine into accepting territorial concessions.
Exactly. When you add external pressure, like the threat of cutting off US weapons and intelligence support, Ukraine is left with a seemingly impossible choice: sign away crucial territory and future capabilities, or, well,
Right, I
continue
get it.
fighting with diminishing backing.
Now, another angle that intrigues me is Europe's role. Given the potential fracture of NATO, what leverage does Europe still hold in this scenario?
Europe, despite its vulnerabilities, still holds some potent tools. For one, there are hundreds of billions in frozen Russian assets sitting in European banks and
Yeah,
jurisdictions. Leaders are debating whether to tap into these assets to finance defense and reconstruction in Ukraine. Beyond that, European governments can also ramp up support through military aid, air defense systems, and training programs, which could be crucial in ensuring that Ukraine isn't abandoned.
it sounds like European support might be the last line of defense to prevent Ukraine from being forced into this unequal peace.
Exactly right. The narrative really boils down to this: if European backing holds strong along with relentless US support, Ukraine can potentially resist the pressure. But if those pillars begin to crumble, then the door opens for a peace settlement that fundamentally favors Russia, breaking not only Ukraine, but the transatlantic unity too.
Hmm. And that in turn might deeply undermine the whole collective security framework that NATO represents, correct?
Absolutely. Think of it as a domino effect. A compromised peace plan could signal that even after years of commitment and investment in security, major powers may still allow coercive deals. That
Right.
sends a message that borders can be redrawn by might and not by mutual consent or resilience.
Now, I wonder, is there any hope that the current chaos and these under the table deals might eventually be challenged by a more balanced negotiation process?
That's a great question, and one that many critics are asking. There is, in fact, a strong argument that this peace plan isn't a genuine, balanced effort to resolve conflict.
Hmm.
Some argue that if pressure from Europe remains robust, politically, economically, and militarily, then the government in Kiev might, have a proper bargaining chip to refuse a one sided deal.
Yet, I feel there's a risk here. I respectfully challenge that point a bit. Aren't there forces like internal political pressures and military vulnerabilities that might leave Ukraine with hardly any choice but to accept?
You make a valid point. It's a tough call. While external support might act as a buffer, the internal strife and sheer military pressure on Ukraine are real and immediate.
Right.
If the urgent tactical situation outweighs the promise of long term strategic support, Ukraine could indeed be cornered into what many see as a winning but ultimately destructive deal for Russia.
So it's really a race against time for Ukraine to gather and maintain robust support from Europe and the US, isn't it?
Yes, precisely. The entire scenario underscores two core takeaways. First, that so called peace plans can be engineered by powerful forces to enforce capitulation in vulnerable nations. And second, that steadfast, coordinated external support, especially from Europe, is essential in countering such
Hmm.
pressures.
It sounds like the outcome will not only determine Ukraine's fate, but could also reshape the security architecture of Europe for years to come.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that sometimes the pursuit of quick peace, a peace that may feel like a band aid over a deep wound, can leave long term strategic scars. It's like accepting
Right.
temporary relief at the cost of permanent loss of sovereignty and security.
Quite a sobering thought. So, in wrapping this up, what do you think is the real message behind all this?
The message is twofold. One, that peace based on coercion and unequal terms is a dangerous weapon in the hands of stronger powers. And two, that the resilience of international alliances, especially European support, remains the true safeguard against a manipulated outcome that unduly favors
Yeah,
aggression.
it really puts into perspective the complex and at times murky interplay of power, diplomacy, and internal strife that shapes conflict resolution on a grand scale.
Absolutely. And as we watch these events unfold, it's a stark reminder that the real peace must be built on genuine equality and security for all, not a forced compromise from the top down.
Hmm. Thanks for breaking this down. It's a lot to digest, but the way you've laid out the layers really helps understand the stakes.
Anytime. It's a critical discussion that reaffirms how vital, transparent, robust support is in defending not only Ukraine, but the principles that underpin
Right.
international stability.
And I guess we all hope that, in the end, the right checks and balances kick in before any irreversible damage is done.
Exactly. Here's hoping that the future of peace isn't built on unequal concessions, but on real mutual security.
Yep.